Well, his wife packed up his belongings a few days after his disappearance, somehow sure he wasn't coming home, and he was last seen heading to the hospital to see a brand new baby granddaughter. It seems this guy was thrown out with the bathwater. Was it murder, a suicide, or was this man filled with optimism? On the other end, was he so consumed with despair that he committed suicide? Well, welcome to Profiling Evil in this episode of Missing Persons. Hey, hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, and make sure you're signing up for all of our notifications. And hey, consider our channel memberships. We really appreciate the support. Now, this episode was recorded more than a year ago, and we've had to take some time in releasing it just to get some things out of the way first and make sure that the timing was right. I want to thank my co-host on this one, Taylor Nicholas of TGI Crime Day. I hope you'll go over and subscribe to her channel and check her out. Now, Taylor, let's dig into this case.
On May 2nd, 2006, Thomas Proffit got the great news that his daughter Amanda had given birth to a healthy baby girl. Thomas was relieved that his granddaughter was doing well after being born 14 weeks early, and that Amanda was recovering from her emergency C-section. He told Amanda over the phone that he was heading to the hospital and would see her in a little while. Unfortunately, Thomas never made it to the hospital, and that was the last time anyone in Thomas's family would hear from him. The following day, Thomas's daughter Jeannie reported him missing. When police went to question his wife, she could not provide information about Thomas, such as his birthday, social security number, or what he was wearing the last time she saw him. According to Anna, Thomas left their home after an argument and was possibly suicidal. No one in Thomas's family feels that this is possible.
Well, by all accounts, Thomas was just a hard-working family guy. His sister Darlene described him as a jack of all trades. Now, his son in law, future son in law, I might add, Daniel, described him as a fun loving guy that was full of life. Daniel said that Thomas had this pretty big circle of friends and they all seemed to like him. He loved his daughters and he loved his sister. Frankly, Taylor, everything that I'm hearing from the family as we visited with them is that this is a guy who loved his family and he just wouldn't have got up and left on his own. Now, Darlene, his sister, was 10 years older than Thomas, but this is a woman who absolutely adored Thomas from the time he was born. They were always close, even as they were adults. And I found a quote that she said in a podcast that she did, really interesting. She said, quote, "He was a special person. Everybody liked Tom," close quote. It sounded like they felt like everybody who knew this guy liked him, except for they specifically called out one person in the family, his current wife, that she wondered if she and her family ever did like Tom.
And remember, as we talk about this case, we encourage you to look more online for information about Thomas's disappearance, including an episode of the Vanished podcast that talks about his case. So, from what I saw, Thomas and his first wife divorced a few years before he met his current wife. Once they started dating, things moved very quickly. Thomas introduced his new wife to his daughters, who were shocked when they found out that Thomas and she had already gotten married. His daughter Amanda said that she wished her dad would have told her beforehand, because if he had, she probably would have tried to talk him out of marrying her. During the short time that they dated, they split up a few times because, quote, she got mad at him for the silliest things possible, according to Amanda. The new marriage occurred a year before his disappearance, and we're unsure how their relationship was outside of her comment that they fought before he left the home. Thomas's family felt like they had a pretty strained relationship with her. After Thomas disappeared, his wife allegedly told police that she wanted his daughters to stay away from her because she was worried that they would try to hurt her. This was something that made no sense to Amanda and Jeannie. Less than a week after Thomas vanished, his wife called the family to let them know that she was moving out of her house, and if they wanted any of Thomas's things, they would need to pick them up. Since then, they have had no contact with her.
So, Taylor, this is a pretty interesting case from the standpoint of the who done it or what done it in this thing. And oftentimes, when we look at these kinds of cases, we want to look at whether this could be a suicide, like his wife is suggesting in what you just shared with me. Could it be that it was an accident? And of course, the third would be a homicide. So let's talk a little bit because you said his wife said that they had a fight and he was suicidal. Do we know much more outside of just those simple words?
It sounds like that was the only information that was provided. Obviously, like we've talked about before, there's a very good chance that there was more said to the police than has been released to us as the public, of course. But from what I understand, he was out the door on his way to go see his daughter and his new granddaughter. And then suddenly there was possibly a fight that derailed that plan. And that's when this theory of a possible suicide came in. No one in his family feels like that was a possibility because he had never had any suicidal tendencies before. And every other quote that you can find about him talks about nothing but how much he loved his family and how much he loved his daughters and how dedicated he was to them. So it feels very unlikely to me that that was a suicidal person that left that house that day. But we all know that everyone has a side of them that we don't see and that we don't interact with. But it sounds like that's the least likely possibility.
Well, this is interesting when you start thinking about situations like this because the information we have is that family says he's excited about going to see this brand new baby. He says, I'm heading out the door, but we don't know the timing about that phone call and the fight that his wife says they had. And so I'm going to just play devil's advocate for a moment here and say, now, what if in fact he had these great hopes that he was going to go see this little baby and he was going to go see his kids, but then he gets into the fight with his spouse and it's just the final straw that breaks the camel's back in the relationship because we don't know what the relationship's like, but they've only been married a year, and the way in which some of the dynamics after the case happen. I guess the question I would have for you is, what are your thoughts in this idea of suicide versus that he would never commit suicide if, in fact, he had a blowout with his wife and then starts to head out the door? Is it possible that he could say, I've had it. I've had it with all this stuff. And that the fight and the emotion of the fight takes over the excitement that he had maybe 20 minutes earlier about going and seeing a grandchild.
Yeah, I think the timing aspect of it is a really good point because we don't know if he was maybe on his way out. I know that in the podcast that I listened to, his daughters talked about this strained relationship that they even had with his wife, where there were times that he didn't want, or where she didn't want Thomas to go and see them, or he didn't want to visit them, or they didn't feel necessarily welcome. So I think that's possible. And I think you brought up a really great point of we don't know what that fight looked like if they had been fighting before this. The thing that makes me pause is that I think that in all of the years that Thomas was married to his first wife, as far as we know, there was never a situation where he blew up and got to this point of feeling suicidal. So I think it's interesting to look at the past behavior of this person and see that he was always very calm and level headed and a family man, and he would get things done when it needed to get done. When we talked to Amanda's husband, Daniel, he said that no matter what was going on in his life outside of his marriage or what was going on inside of his life with his daughters was so important to him, and he would never let that affect his relationship with them. There was this huge
Yeah,
fight that maybe
that's a pretty powerful statement in and of itself. And again, I guess the investigative side of me has to keep going back to this is why it's so important that we know the order in which things happen. Because if the fight happened before he says to his daughter, I'm excited and I'm on my way to see the baby, then all of a sudden that's a whole lot different than, hey, I'm on my way to see the baby and then I have a blowout with my wife and it's the straw that breaks my back and I've had a gutful and all of a sudden suicide makes sense. So the first emotion of excitement to see the baby gets swallowed up in the anguish of the relationship, if the relationship's bad, and we don't know, I'm only theorizing, versus I've just been in a fight with my wife, and now I just found out about this cool thing, a little baby coming into the world, and I'm excited to go see the baby. That to me is the difference between suicide and an accident. And that's why the timing of what happened is so important.
I do know that after Thomas went missing, his family was not able to contact her. They were never they never really had any kind of an actual interaction other than when Darlene went to go pick up his things from their house. All of his stuff was already in boxes, ready for her to pick up and leave. To me, that feels really weird just because he had only been missing for a few days. It was less than a week at that point, and she had already packed up all his things and knew he wasn't coming back without knowing where he went. Is that weird, or am I reading too much into it?
So you are absolutely right. That's weird. And we might be reading more into it than there is. How's that for an answer? Because
I
think about
think that's
this
fair.
now for an idea. So let's think about this from a little different angle. I don't know what the finances were in this family, but something happened that changed, and um, Thomas's wife had to leave the home that they had been living in. Does that mean they were renting? Did they own? Did all of a sudden, with him disappearing, they couldn't pay this month's rent? It's a big stretch to say that a landlord threw him out a week after her husband disappeared because they couldn't pay rent, unless they had been facing eviction or something else long before that. But again, I always like to play the devil's advocate, and I think to myself, you are absolutely right. It is weird behavior to pack up your loved one's belongings, call the family, say, we don't want anything to do with you, but you got the next couple of days to come and get your dad's goods and get out of my life because I don't want anything to do with you. Versus if there's some dialogue in there that we don't know that's saying something like, I'm being evicted. I've got to box up his belongings, and the best place for him to go is to your place because I'm going to be indigent and don't have any place else to keep him. Even then, that's a real stretch for me that you do that to someone you're married to. But I have to throw it out as a devil's advocate.
Yes. No, I think it's really good that you point out both sides of it because I tend to jump to feeling weird about it. And it's good to remind me to take a minute to look at it from other possibilities. One thing I do know is that after he disappeared, there were 2 paychecks that were never picked up from his place of employment. Generally, aren't you able to? So if it's your spouse, don't you think she would have been able to go and pick those up and maybe be able to deposit them to pay that rent? Or do you think that that's something that they wouldn't have let her do and they just kept them there and it had to be Thomas that picked them up?
My response to that is really kind of interesting. Of did she really attempt to get it? Did they have separate banking accounts or a joint checking account or a deposit account? In many cases, you'd see people that probably would have scribbled their husband's name on the back and said husband by wife and put the name and deposited into his account, which depositing is a whole lot easier than withdrawing. But again, it's the question becomes, did she have access to the account? And again, why not go forward and look at that? That's really interesting and would be really interesting to explore further. Hey folks, it's Mike from Profiling Evil, and I wanted to take a minute and tell you about our affiliate, Truthfinder. It's a company that I've been using for a couple of years to research cases and individuals. Now, Truthfinder uses publicly available information, but it brings it together in a way that provides answers quickly and concisely. You can use Truthfinder to check out your new babysitter, or maybe that new love in your life, or just to find somebody you haven't seen for an awfully long time. Truthfinder provides these comprehensive background reports, telephone reports, email reports, and even location information. So when you go in and examine the information in their search results, you're going to find personal information, contact information, and places where your target has lived, not only historically, but currently. Now, all this can seem really overwhelming and maybe a little invasive to you. So I want to make sure you understand all of the information is publicly available information. Truthfinder just has an algorithm that brings it all together in a way that makes it a whole lot easier to access. Now, Truthfinder is an affiliate, which means we get a tiny commission when you sign up. It's about enough to buy a Diet Dr. Pepper, frankly. But I want you to know that I use it every single day, and I hope that you'll take a moment and sign up with them. I've given you a discount code, and it's down in the link below, so make sure you grab it. EVIL10. And remember, you can cancel this thing at any time. Now, I hope you'll give them a try, but before you do, let's just jump back into today's discussion.
So, Mike, let's take a look at the geography, because now that you're so into maps and explaining it to me, I'm getting more into the map part of this. Can we take a look at where Thomas's house was compared to where the hospital that he would have been going to?
So, Taylor, if we look at this map, we can see the area that we're talking about. Right here with this blue point on the map that I'm circling is Winchester. And then over here to the left, we can see Lexington, Kentucky. And we know that Thomas's grandchild was just born in a hospital in the Lexington area. Now, the family's still having a real tough time dealing with this, and they just didn't want to speak much to us. And so we couldn't really dig into deep detail about where the hospital was in relationship that they were traveling to. Initially, we wondered if it was the hospital that's right here in Winchester, but in fact, we learned from Daniel King, Thomas's son-in-law, that it was actually a hospital in Lexington. Now, the thing that's kind of interesting is when we add this layer of all the hospitals in the community, there are a batch of them to contend with. So here's all the hospitals in the area. Again, it's not the hospital in Winchester that baby was born into. It's one of these over in Lexington. So as we looked at that, we thought it would be important to just plot out the direction that Proffit would have traveled from his home to the center of Lexington, to one of those hospitals in the center. Now, as we plotted this area out, we realized that this same route up until this exchange on 27 and 75 is exactly the same, regardless of which hospital that they go to. Now, the only different thing would be if they went to one of these hospitals below. So we also plotted in the location if they would have gone to that particular hospital. But it didn't make a difference, because here's what's important is there were a couple of key waterways along the way that really stood out as interesting. One in particular is this river to the west. Now, this river to the west is called the North Elkhorn River, and it is big enough that a vehicle could get into it. And during springtime, again, think about this. This is May, so this is still a time when runoff's running pretty high, but the possibility of this river running really high is possible. And that means that the vehicle, if he went off the road as he was driving westbound on the freeway or on the highway there, could have been moved by that large amount of water and pushed further downstream and displaced. So someone looking right off the side of the road may never see it, because it could have been pushed further downstream and maybe even around a corner or out. The thing that's so interesting about this, though, is Daniel, his son-in-law, is a professional fisherman. He knows these rivers. He fishes them all the time. He is confident that he would stumble across something there. So that takes us back to the other location that's kind of interesting here. Now, again, we have another river here, the David Fork River. And again, the question becomes, is it big enough to hold a vehicle and hide a vehicle? And then this one was kind of interesting here. This slough, or this pond, I don't know how deep that was, but when we look at this from an aerial image, we have a completely different view. This is only a few feet off of the highway, and the road happens to be curving a little bit. If he wasn't paying attention, was driving, is it possible he could have ended up in that? Now, the thing that's kind of troubling about this is it looks like at this photograph or this image of that pond that the water drops down pretty low in there. We can see that it's dried up quite a bit around the edges, but look at this dark part right here in the middle. It may have a really deep section in there that would be worth looking into. So now we cannot discount that this is a heavily wooded area, and there might be locations out there as well that are completely wooded, no water, and it's hiding this vehicle, just like a needle in a haystack.
So, this is where you guys, as viewers, come in and help provide important information. If you know something about this case, no matter how small, call the Clark County Sheriff's Office, the Winchester Police Department, or the Kentucky State Police immediately and share the information. Don't broadcast it on social media. Go straight to law enforcement and give them your tips.
Well, folks, as we wrap up our discussion on the missing person, Thomas Proffit from Winchester, Kentucky, I want to just take a moment and summarize a couple of thoughts that I've had. At the time of his disappearance, Thomas's wife indicated that they just had another fight and that he was suicidal. Now, reports suggest that she told his family members and others that Thomas left their home with intentions to commit suicide. We don't really know what those intentions are and what really was discussed there. Only the police do, I hope, and they would have a good handle on that. But we just haven't been able to talk to the wife or family members much about this in detail. This is incredibly painful for this family, even today, to talk about. And we've had to be very careful about trying to extract information from them. But suicide cannot be discounted as a possibility. But his behavior is really troubling when you consider that he just received word that he had a brand new baby grandchild. His daughter said she spoke to him personally. He wasn't depressed. He wasn't angry. He didn't complain about fighting with his wife or having problems at that moment. He was elated with the news of this new baby, saying he was coming to the hospital right away to meet the newest addition to their family. So, how do we reconcile these polar descriptions of emotion and behavior? Well, the bottom line is we might not be able to. Now, again, perhaps law enforcement, the only people who have interviewed Thomas's wife and his children at the time that this occurred, might have answers to these questions. I mean, the thing that I keep going back to is, when did the alleged fight between Thomas and his wife happen? When did the phone call where his daughter tells him about this brand new baby happen? Which one was in front of the other, and how close in time were they to each other? Because I believe the timing is critical, and knowing which happened first is going to be truly telling in this case. Now, some people and some reports have suggested that Thomas was actually murdered by somebody close to him. If it was a homicide, why was Thomas murdered? And how did somebody hide his vehicle, destroy evidence, clean up a crime scene, and wipe him from existence in just such a short time as a few hours? And frankly, what would be the motivation to murder? I mean, the guy certainly wasn't wealthy. Now, this is an interesting question, because I wonder, was there a life insurance policy? And was it cashed in? Or were there other unsavory issues going on in his life? But there's one thing that we did learn from his son in law. I don't know the extent of this, but he said that there had been some illegal drug use in the past. And I don't know whether that was illicit drugs or misuse of prescription drugs. But apparently there was some drug abuse from time to time. Could this have been a reason for his disappearance? Or, if driving, his impaired driving or inability to drive safely? Which really leaves me wondering if there simply was just an accident and Thomas and his vehicle became that needle in a haystack that we often speak of. In his excitement to see this brand new baby, was he driving too fast, perhaps impaired by drugs or alcohol, and lost control, crashing into the woods, maybe somewhere in plain sight hidden, and really make a difference? These possibilities leave me thinking that accident is a strong possibility. Now, still, suicide, homicide, maybe, and accident. But this leaves me wondering and scratching my head, how on earth do you have this sudden separation of emotion by his spouse? This is what's reported by his family. I mean, is it normal behavior to pack his belongings up and ship them off a week after his disappearance? Is it normal behavior to simply pull up stakes and move? Is it normal behavior to prevent his children from asking questions about their father who suddenly disappeared? Now, regardless, this family has gone on for decades without answers to their question of what happened to Thomas Proffit. I want to give Taylor a special thank you on this case because she experienced firsthand and probably for the first time the real trauma that's felt in these kinds of investigations. As you ask families about such horrible memories, you can see and feel the pain suffered by this family. And Taylor got to experience it firsthand this time. I want to apologize to Thomas's daughters, his sister, and Daniel, his son-in-law, for the flood of painful memories that our questioning drummed up. These kinds of cases are difficult, folks. They're hard on families, but they're also hard on people that have to investigate them, like the police department. I reached out to the police chief who said he was going to have the detective division commander call me and talk about the case. The call never came. I'm not sure what happened there. And I'm really disappointed that we didn't get a chance to talk because I wanted to represent the things that I believe the police department has done to try to bring closure to this family. I hope they're successful as they carry on. I hope they remain vigilant in looking out for and bringing justice to Thomas Proffit's family. So, what are your thoughts on this perplexing mystery, folks? I mean, we hope you'll take some time and enter your thoughts down below and especially take time to respond to each other. And again, make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button and ringing the bell. And please check out TGI Crime Day. Folks, will you consider our Profiling Evil channel memberships? My favorite, it's the Academy level. And if you like podcasts, make sure you're checking out Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. You can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So make sure you're checking us out. And thanks so much for your support of Profiling Evil. We'll see you all soon at the next crime scene.